Hello everyone, welcome to Lukman IAS. So today on 19th of April 2021, we are going to analyze the Hindu newspaper. So let us quickly see the important articles that are important for the day. So these are the listed articles that are important for the mains exam point of view, and these articles are important for the prelims exam point of view. So let us quickly move to the first topic and let us see the topic, what this topic is all about. So before that, let us read the headline of this particular topic to understand what the headline says. Okay. So the headline of this topic says, explain basis for approving policies. High Court asked insurance body. Okay. So recently what has happened, the Delhi High Court has asked the Insurance Regulatory Authority, which is known as the Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India. It has asked this particular authority to explain the basis on which it has approved the insurance policies. Okay, recently what has happened, this particular authority has authorized those insurance policies that are discriminating in nature, that discriminate between physical and mental illness, mental health and physical health. So that's why Delhi High Court has asked this particular body that on what basis you have certified these insurance policies. Basically the case is recently the government of India had come up with Mental Health Care Act of 2017, and under the Mental Health Care Act of 2017, the mental health has been given equal recognition as physical health. It means mental illness is equally recognized as a physical illness. Okay. So the thing is, according to this particular act, there should not be any discrimination in treating patients, whether that patient is a mentally ill patient or whether that patient is physically ill patient. So recently what has happened, various insurance companies are there in India that get their insurance policies authorized by this particular body, which is known as Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India. But many of those insurance policies are skewed towards physical illness only. So they lack in recognizing and giving full attention to mental illness. Okay. So recently a case was filed in the Delhi High Court where the petitioner has said that mental health is not given proper importance in the health policy of a particular health insurance company, which is Max Bupa Health Insurance Company. Okay. So the thing is, that's why the Delhi High Court has pulled up this particular regulatory authority, and they have asked on what basis you are authorizing such a policy that discriminates mental illness as compared to physical illness. Okay. So the thing is, according to this particular act, mental illness should be treated at par with physical illness, and they should be equally given insurance policies. Okay. So this is the context in which this particular article was there in news. If you want to learn more about it, okay, you can simply follow this reference link from The Hindu. You will get this PDF in our Telegram group, and there you just simply need to click on this particular link. You will be taken to the entire article. Okay. So the High Court, Delhi High Court has observed that a perusal of the Mental Health Care Act of 2017 makes it clear that there can be no discrimination between mental illness and physical illness, and that insurance provided in respect thereof. Means as per this particular act, if we pursue this particular act, then we can clearly see that there can be no discrimination between mental illness and physical illness, and insurance policies should be treated equally when it comes to mental illness or as well as physical illness. Okay. And so the High Court has further observed that this matter requires consideration in as much as the Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India ought to place on record the basis on which the approval has been granted for such insurance policies. Okay, means this particular authority has granted approval for many insurance policies that are discriminatory in nature, that you know have discriminatory provisions against mental health care or mental illness. Okay, so this is the this is all about this particular topic. Let us quickly move to the next topic for the day. Let us understand what is this topic all about. Okay, so if we read the headline over here, we will understand it says normal is good. Okay, so what kind of normal are we talking about? We are talking about, you know, normal monsoon season. Okay, normal monsoon season. So the India Meteorological Department, okay, must continue to widen its focus to aid business and service sectors. Okay, so the author of this particular editorial says that India Meteorological Department must widen, means like it should increase the, you know, kind of services that it is providing to cater to various, you know, needs of various like business providers and you know, service sectors. So here you can see this is the logo of India Meteorological Department. It is also known as Bharat Mausam Vigyan Vibhag. Okay, so this is India Meteorological Department. This is a government agency that forecasts weather in India. Okay, it forecasts like how much rainfall we can expect this particular monsoon season and all. So according to India Meteorological Department, this year India can witness a normal monsoon. Okay, normal monsoon means like, what do we mean by normal monsoon? So whenever we talk about, you know, the monsoon, like the monsoon forecast, we generally compare this particular year's forecast with 50 years, you know, time period, like what has happened in the last 50 years with reference to monsoon. So like, you know, the India Meteorological Department uses a uses a thing that is known as long period average. Okay, long period average is a measure, you know, that talks about what is a normal monsoon. According to the long period average, you know, 88 centimeter, okay, rainfall in India, okay, on an average in a year, if we have 88 centimeter of rainfall in India, that will be categorized as a normal monsoon. Okay, and the thing is, this particular long period average is measured from 1961 to 2010, means like for these 50 years period from 1961 to 2010, during this particular time period, they have, you know, recorded the monsoon in India and they have taken an average of it, and that average came out to be 88 centimeter. Okay, so the thing is, this year's monsoon was predicted by India Meteorological Department that the country may witness 96% to 104% of rainfall this year. That is known as normal monsoon. And apart from this, the IMD, you know, has been forecasting weather of India from last from last 40 years or last 20 years, the India Meteorological Department has been following a two-stage method, where like on one stage, like in the beginning, it gives a, you know, kind of like a prognosis. So the thing is, in the beginning it says like what kind of, you know, rainfall we can witness in India. So it forecasts in one stage, and later on, you know, it comes up with an updated record for the same monsoon period. So it follows a two-stage monsoon forecast system in India. The India Meteorological Department follows a two-stage monsoon forecast system. So the thing is, this particular estimate includes an estimate of how much rain is likely to be in northwest India, northeast India, central India and southern peninsula. Okay, so the thing is, it has categorized you know, India into different regions. One is northwest India, northeast India, central India and southern peninsula. Okay, so this is important for us to understand what is long period average. Okay, and apart from this, the India Meteorological Department has forecasted that a normal monsoon forecast this year is primarily predicted on neutral surface temperature in the central equatorial Pacific. Okay, so the thing is, they are comparing the temperature, they are seeing the temperature in the central equatorial Pacific. It simply means like in the Pacific Ocean, let's consider this is Pacific Ocean, they are seeing the equatorial region in the Pacific Ocean, and they have seen then the central portion of the equatorial Pacific, okay, in the Pacific Ocean, in the equatorial region and in the central region, the temperature was found to be normal. So that's why they have predicted that India may witness a normal monsoon. Okay, why the temperature in the equatorial Pacific is important to see the monsoon in India? Okay, there are various factors to it. One of the factor is El Nino. Okay, so the thing is, when the temperature in the equatorial Pacific is above normal, then it will lead to El Nino situation. When there is an El Nino situation, so we witness below average monsoon in India. Okay, so and the thing is, when the temperature in the equatorial Pacific is low, that is known as La Nina situation, La Nina. Okay, when the temperature is low, so then we see above normal monsoon in India. Okay, above normal monsoon in India. Okay, so the thing is, the temperature situations in the equatorial region in the Pacific Ocean has some relations with the kind of this thing, the monsoon that we can see in India. So when the temperature is high in the equatorial Pacific, it will lead to a El Nino situation, and El Nino is inversely connected with the monsoon in India. So whenever it is a El Nino situation, we will see below normal monsoon in India. Whenever it is a La Nina situation, La Nina is just opposite of El Nino, then we will see above normal monsoon in India. And apart from this, Indian Ocean dipole also plays a role in the monsoon in India. Whenever we have positive Indian Ocean dipole, we will see greater monsoon in India. If we have a negative Indian Ocean dipole, we will see less than average monsoon in India, means less than average rainfall in India. And what do we mean by Indian Ocean dipole? In the Indian Ocean, in the western and eastern Indian Ocean region, if the western Indian Ocean region temperature is positive, eastern Indian Ocean temperature is negative. So the temperature, there is a variation of temperature in the eastern and western region of the Indian Ocean region, that is known as Indian Ocean dipole. So positive Indian Ocean dipole implies a greater than normal rainfall in India, and negative Indian Ocean dipole implies a less than normal rainfall in India. So these are the factors that affect the monsoons in India, and they are complex interplay of all these factors. Means like La Nina will play role, El Nino will play a role, Indian Ocean dipole will play a role, and apart from this there are other factors also. We have Madden-Julian oscillation as well. Okay, so these factors play role in how much monsoon we can expect in a particular monsoon season in India. Okay, so this is one thing. So that's how we have understood how the temperature in the central equatorial Pacific actually has some role to play in the Indian Ocean region and in monsoons in India. And so the thing is, this particular forecast are a critical aspect of India's disaster preparedness. So there should also be focus on incorporating these forecasts down to municipal and block level planning. Okay, so these forecasts should be utilized by by planners at the municipal level and as well as block levels. Okay, so the thing is, the author is saying that the India Meteorological Department should actually broaden its scope of forecast, and it should try to give data to other businesses as well. Means like businesses that are dependent on how much rain is happening in India, like goods and services providers should also be benefited with the services that are being provided by India Meteorological Department, because it is the only central government agency, it is the only government agency in India that has the resources that are unmatched with any private agency in India, that can give data related to monsoon in India at a very very accurate and specific levels. So that's all. If you want to learn more, you can simply follow this link from The Hindu. Okay. Having understood this, let us understand another topic for the day. Okay. This is topic 3. Let us understand what this topic is all about. This topic says implementing green contracts. Okay. How corporations can cut down emissions. Okay. So this particular article highlights, says like what are green contract and how we can incorporate green contracts. Okay. And at the same time, this particular article tries to put forward the viewpoint that how corporations or companies can enforce the green contracts to reduce the emission levels in the world. Okay. So this is the thing. So let us see the context in which it was in news. So the thing is, the author says that climate change is playing a greater role in the world nowadays, because the global temperature is increasing, global warming is happening, and this is a gradual phenomena. It is the global warming is increasing day by day. So the thing is, like, every stakeholder in the world should have a role to play, so that like we can mitigate the effect of global warming, and so that we can reduce the emission of greenhouse gases. So here the author says that like the consumers of services as well as corporations that are providing these services, they are together getting the benefit of the goods and services that are being provided and that are being serviced to normal people. And so it is the responsibility, it is the collective responsibility of the corporations as well as individuals to play role, so that like they can together take they can together put effort to reduce the greenhouse gases emission in the world. Okay. So the thing is, the author is highlighting that in this particular scenario we should look forward for a sustainable future, so that like we can sustain the level of emissions that is happening, and at the same time we should use alternative form of energy, so that like the emission level can be the effect of those emission can be reduced to a greater extent. So here let us understand what do we mean by green contract. So the author is saying like there should be clauses of green contract, like in the contracts itself there should be green things should be included. So let us understand what do we mean by green contract. So green contract refers to commercial contracts which mandate that contracting parties cut down greenhouse gas emissions at different stages of delivery of goods and services, including design, manufacturing, transportation, operations and waste disposal as applicable to the industry. Okay. So the thing is, it simply says that those corporations, or like there are various government agencies that are giving contract to corporations for implementing a particular project. So in implementing those projects there should be clause that actually highlight about green contracts. Okay. So like those clauses should be in such a manner that it gives some obligations to these contracting parties or these corporations, that like they should utilize their energy, or they should use their processes in such a manner so that like we can incorporate the green norms, so that we can reduce the emission at every stage from production to the delivery of a particular good or services. Okay. So it is saying like including like whenever we are designing something, at the designing stage itself, okay, at the designing stage itself we should have we should actually adhere to the green clauses. And apart from this, during the manufacturing, transportation, operations and waste disposal, okay, so whatever processes are there, in every stage we should have certain clause, so that like we can implement the norms related to green contract, so that greenhouse gases emission can be reduced, and like it should be climate friendly. Okay. So this is the thing. And the thing is, the author further highlight that like at this stage, at the bidding stage itself, let's consider there is a government, okay, and there are multiple corporations, and the government is initiating a bidding process, like it is initiating a bidding process where the corporations can come together, they can bid for a particular project. So the author is saying that at the bidding stage itself, that green contract should be included, so that like those companies that has, you know, more potential for reducing the emission, okay, while implementing a particular project, so those companies should be given preferences, okay. So the author highlights that like this green contract can be implemented at the bidding stage itself, and apart from this we can, you know, we can ensure that some qualifications must be there for these companies, you know, to qualify, you know, for participating in the bidding process. And those qualifications can include the clauses related to greenhouse gas emission standards and all. And this can be achieved by contractual clauses providing for the use of good quality and energy efficient infrastructure for production of goods or services. Efforts in day-to-day operations such as reducing noise, air and water pollution, and ensuring eco-friendly means of transportation like bicycles on site, establishing and maintaining a sustainable waste management system, and so on. So author is saying that like, you know, those companies should be given contract that adheres to basic principles like, you know, they should reduce the greenhouse gas emission at every stage of their operation in the industry, okay. So understanding this, let us understand like how do we meet these obligations, okay. So the author has given two different ways how we can enforce these obligations, okay, the obligations related to green contract. So author says that one effective way to make sure that the service providers adhere to these contractual obligations would be to provide for measurement criteria and audit of the performance, okay. So it says like it should include measurement criteria and audit of the performance of the contractor with regard to these obligations. And an organization may also choose to contractually highlight non-performance of obligations as a ground for contractual breach with penalty prescriptions. Means like in the contract itself there should be provisions like how they are going to implement these green norms, and at the same time like what are the things that they are going to incorporate on a day-to-day operation basis. And if in case a particular corporation does not adhere to the clauses of a green contract, then it can be considered as a breach of the, you know, breach of the contract itself, and we can implement, you know, penalty provisions for those corporations, okay. Apart from this, the author further concludes by saying naturally the degree of effecting a green contract will depend on the type of contract and the industry to which it relates, okay. So the thing is how much green contract we can have, it depends on the industry to which this particular green contract is being implemented, and at the same time it also depends on the type of contract that we are signing. And apart from this, the author further highlights that like, you know, having a brown contract is easier as compared to having a green contract, because like green contract needs further efforts by corporations at every level. So it may increase the cost, but this cost should not, you know, should not overtake the cost that the entire globe is paying in terms of, you know, global or greenhouse gas emissions and global warming, okay. So the author says that like global warming should be reduced, you know, should be like reduced at the most, like, you know, it should be reduced at the best possible manner. And for that, like, we should not look into the, you know, minor cost that arises while enforcing green contracts. So this is all about this particular article. So I hope you have understood what do we mean by green contract. Apart from this, let us talk about the next topic for the day. This topic is about bat with a sticky disc found in Meghalaya, okay. So here you can see a picture. This is the picture of a bat. So this particular bat, okay, this particular bat has a sticky disc, means like in its leg, okay, the leg is disc shape, means like it is rounded, and it is sticky, means like it sticks to a particular surface. And this was this particular species was found for the first time in India, in the state of Meghalaya, okay. So like this particular article is about this particular bat, and it is very important from prelims perspective, prelims examination of 2021. So let us understand about this article. It says Eudiscopus, Okay, Eudiscopus denticulus. Okay, Eudiscopus denticulus. What do we mean by Eudiscopus denticulus? It means the disc-footed bat. Okay, disc-footed means like it is a bat that whose foot is like a disc. Okay, it is known as Eudiscopus denticulus. This is the scientific name. Okay, so Eudiscopus denticulus was recorded near Nongkhailam Wildlife Sanctuary. Okay, so this is very important. The name of this particular wildlife sanctuary is very important. It is Nongkhailam Wildlife Sanctuary. Where is it? Where it is located? It is located in the state of Meghalaya in India. So I have included a map about this particular wildlife sanctuary in later portion of discussion in today's article. Okay, so it is about Nongkhailam Wildlife Sanctuary. Okay, so let us see the context in which it was in news. Okay, so the editorial says that Meghalaya has yielded India's first bamboo dwelling bat with sticky disc. Okay, this is India's first bamboo dwelling bat with sticky disc. Bamboo dwelling means this particular bat is found in areas where we found bamboo plant a lot. Okay, so taking the species count of flying mammal in the country to be 130. So in India at this point of time we have 130 species of flying mammal. Okay, of flying mammal or bat. Okay, not bat means like there can be different species of flying mammal. So like at this point of time we have 130 such species in India. Okay, so the disc-footed bat, which is also known as Eudiscopus denticulus, was recorded in the northeastern states leaded area near the Nongkhailam Wildlife Sanctuary. This name of the sanctuary is very important. You should remember that this sanctuary is located in the state of Meghalaya in India. Meghalaya is a northeastern state in India. Okay, so this particular Nongkhailam Wildlife Sanctuary is located about 1000 km west of its nearest known habitat, which is known as Myanmar. Okay, so this particular bat is found in southern China, it is found in Myanmar also, and it is found in nearby areas, and this was for the first time, okay, like located in the state of Meghalaya in India. Okay, so a team of scientists from Zoological Survey of India and a few European natural history museums, okay, they have together found out this particular bat, and they have highlighted about the importance of this bat. And it was published in this result of finding of this particular bat was published in this particular scientific journal, which is known as Revue Suisse de Zoologie. Okay, Revue Suisse de Zoologie is the name of the journal where the finding of this particular species was mentioned. Okay, it is a Swiss journal. Okay, so this particular journal is being published in Switzerland. Okay, name of the journal is also important from prelims perspective. So let us understand about this bat more, and before this let us see where is Nongkhailam Wildlife Sanctuary located. Okay, this is Nongkhailam Wildlife Sanctuary. So this is Nongkhailam Wildlife Sanctuary and Reserve Forest. Okay, so you can see this is the map of India. Over here this is the map of India, and here you can see this is the map of Meghalaya. Okay, so where is Meghalaya located in India? Meghalaya is located over here. Okay, Meghalaya is located over here. Okay, this is the location of Meghalaya, and the thing is, and this is the map of Nongkhailam Wildlife Sanctuary. This one is, this is not the map of Meghalaya. This is inside Meghalaya. This is the map of Nongkhailam Wildlife Sanctuary. Okay, so let us understand more about this particular bat. Okay, so the newly recorded bat was presumed to be a bamboo dwelling species, means like it resides in places where we find bamboo plants. Okay, but its flattened skull and adhesive pads helped in identifying it as disc-footed, known from the specific localities in South China, Vietnam, Thailand and Myanmar. Okay, so this particular bat is found in these locations like South China, Vietnam, Thailand and Myanmar. The flattened skull and sticky pads enabled the bats to roost inside cramped spaces, clinging to smooth surfaces such as bamboo, like this. Okay, so the thing is, this disc-footed this disc foot actually helps this particular bat to stick to any surfaces, to dwell in the these regions where we find bamboo. Okay, so this particular species genetically different from other bat species. Okay, so that's why it was in news. And apart from this, okay, the scientists analyzed the very high frequency echolocation calls of the disc-footed bat. What do we mean by echolocation call? Echolocation means like these bats, like when there is high darkness, means like when the darkness is very high, nothing is visible. So these bats are able to freely move from one location to another. How? They send some kind of noise or signals. Okay, these noise signals are reflected from different surfaces, and they hear their noise again, so they are able to identify like how far is our obstacle located. Okay, so they can navigate in dark regions also using a property that is known as echolocation. Okay, this is known as echolocation. So echolocation helps various species to move from one place to another in stark darkness. Okay, in darkness they can easily float, or they can easily move using the property which is known as echolocation. So this this disc-footed bat also uses this particular property, echolocation. So it is able to utilize echolocation for navigation in dark spaces. Okay, so it is suitable for orientation in cluttered environments such as inside bamboo groups. The disc-footed bat has raised Meghalaya's bat count to 66. Now at this point of time, the state of Meghalaya has 66 bats, and most for any state in India. Okay, so like it has 66 bats in Meghalaya. So if you want to learn more about it, you can simply follow this reference link from The Hindu. Okay, so having understood that topic, let us quickly move to the next topic for the day. This topic is very important. It is an ongoing issue that is in news for a long time now. Let us understand the heading. Okay, this heading says that Myanmar shadow government wants invite from ASEAN crisis talk. Okay, so you might be aware that recently, like on 1st of February 2021, the democratically elected Myanmar government was toppled. It was overthrown by military power, that is known as military coup. Okay, so that military coup was done by junta. Junta is the Myanmarese military. Junta is the name of Myanmarese military. Okay, so they have overthrown the democratically elected government from Myanmar. Okay, so after then the military government came into power, and now an international meeting is going to be held soon of this ASEAN grouping. ASEAN stands for Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and this particular organization, okay, it is a regional organization. This organization has 10 members at this point of time. Okay, we will discuss like who are the members of this particular organization, which countries are members of this organization, and at the same time we are going to talk about the recent crisis as well. Okay, so after the Myanmari army has overthrown the democratically elected government, the people have started protesting against the military coup, and the Myanmari military has in retaliation killed more than 730 protesters. Okay, they have massacred, they have killed more than 730 protesters in Myanmar. So globally, this particular step of junta is the military of Myanmar, is being criticized by different countries worldwide. Okay, so at this point of time, this particular organization has invited the military leader of Myanmar, means the leader of junta. So they have invited the leader of junta. So the thing is, this particular step of ASEAN is also being criticized by different government in the world. So the thing is, at this point of time, the shadow government, what do we mean by shadow government? Means the government that is not in power at this point of time. The earlier democratically elected government is now being called as shadow government. Okay, So the thing is, the you know, like overthrown government has, you know, created a new government over there, means like they have created a new party that is known as unitary government. Okay, so Myanmar unitary government. So they have created a unitary government, and that particular unitary government is being referred as shadow government. So the unitary government has, you know, like, you know, appealed to the ASEAN countries that, like, you know, the shadow government should be allowed to participate in the ASEAN crisis talk, in the ASEAN meeting, and they at the same time say that the junta should not be allowed to participate in the ASEAN talk, and junta should not be recognized officially. Okay, so this is the thing. So this particular shadow government urges foreign leaders not to formally recognize the junta. Okay, not to formalize, not to formally recognize the junta. Okay, so this was the like, you know, context in which this article was in news. So over here you can see the map of Southeast Asian nations. This is the map of Myanmar. Okay, this is the map of Myanmar. So this is the country where recently we have seen a military coup. Okay, we have seen a military coup where the military dictators, okay, they have overthrown a democratically elected government in Myanmar. Okay, so this is the map of Myanmar. Okay, over here. And apart from this, okay, over here you can see this is the map of ASEAN countries. Okay, as I already said that ASEAN has 10 member countries. How many countries? We have 10 member countries in ASEAN. Okay, 10 member countries. What are those member countries? Number 1, Laos, then we have Myanmar, Thailand, Singapore, okay, Vietnam, Cambodia, Malaysia, Brunei, Indonesia, and Philippines. Okay, so these are the members of ASEAN. Okay, these are members of ASEAN. So it has 10 members. So this particular ASEAN is going to have a meeting, okay, a meeting of the leaders of these countries, and in the meeting the leader of junta, okay, was invited, but the shadow government is opposing the invitation of junta, and they want that they should be invited, that the shadow government should be invited, and they at the same time appeal to the, you know, like foreign leaders that, like, leadership of junta should not be recognized. Okay, so this is all about this particular topic. I hope you understood everything in today's discussion. Okay, so that's all that I had to discuss with you for the day. Thank you so much for attending this session. And recently Lukman IAS has launched, you know, few initiatives. One of the initiative is about essay test series. If you want, you can join the essay test series. Okay, the details are mentioned over here. If you want to know more about this detail, you can simply download this PDF from our Telegram group, and you can learn, like, when the test is going to start. Okay, you can contact our counselors as well, and at the same time, like, we are starting a GS, you know, paper 2 test series 2021. Okay, this is going to be the under the guidance of Ansari sir himself. Okay, so thank you so much for attending this session. I hope you have a good day ahead. Bye bye, take care.